Well, hello there, and welcome back to another episode of In Case You Missed It. Unfortunately, Joe couldn't join us for today's session, but don't worry, he'll be back next time. It's crazy busy in the world of GovTech. Now, this week, we're kicking off a new series to explore some of the startups that are pushing the envelope and the boundaries in the GovTech market. And one of the best places to actually find these is through CivStart. CivStart is a GovTech-focused accelerator that's working to create an honest and inclusive ecosystem that produces unique and impactful innovations for state and local government agencies and the communities that they serve. And so for today's episode, we're going to be diving deep in the world of public housing and talking with two startups that are part of the CivStart cohort that have been working to innovate around this area and much, much more. First up, we've got Joe Gurton, head of growth for Stae. Joe, thanks so much for carving some time out to join us.
Dustin, thanks so much for having us. Excited to chat.
So first of all, tell us a little bit about Stae. I know there's, it's got an API approach, an API first approach to integrate surface data and resources across the city without having to integrate systems at the edge. Break that down. What does that mean for us in city government?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So Stae is a data integration platform. Our mission is really to make analytics and reporting dramatically easier to access for folks at all levels of government, city, regional, state. So the way we do that, you're right, we use an API-based approach. Basically what that means in layman's terms is that if you're a city manager or a program manager at the city level and you have piles of data, whether that's sitting around in legacy databases or coming in through an API from a scooter operator, or even if it's just an Excel spreadsheet that's lying around on a shared drive somewhere, you can use Stae to really easily and repeatably standardize that, bring it into the platform, snap it to existing templates that you might have, and analyze it in the platform and push it back out to other stakeholders for use. So basically the TLDR and what we do for city program managers is make these kinds of reporting workflows that were super labor intensive, where you'd have to go to a GIS professional or an IT manager to get them done. We're making those workflows super accessible for you, basically to drive modern performance management at the city level.
That's amazing. You're democratizing performance management, a very complicated thing to do. So tell us a little bit about how you're working to improve outcomes in public housing today.
Yeah, that's a great question. So we're really focused on the grant reporting side of affordable housing and community development. So we co-developed in conjunction with the city of Long Beach in California, what we call essentially the fair housing module for Stae. So most cities and a lot of counties across the country get federal grant funds from the Federal Housing and Urban Development Department through a variety of programs, but the one we're really focused on right now is a program called CDBG, the Community Development Block Grant Program. And one of the cool things about that program is that, well, A, it's been around forever, and B, it's really flexible. So cities and counties can use that money that they get from the federal government to do any number of community programs as long as they're serving low and middle income families. So the key aspect there is that they have to report back to HUD annually through a program called the CAPER, the Consolidated Annual Performance Evaluation Report, how they're actually serving those low and middle income families. That can be through building affordable subsidized housing, that can be providing community amenities like better access to employment by improving transit frequencies. It can be any number of things. And the key is that pulling together all the data to do that report that they have to do to send to HUD every year takes a ton of work, and program managers are doing a lot of stuff manually, repeated tasks, or they're asking IT and GIS professionals to help them out with these reports. And as we often know, those GIS and IT professionals at the city level have a million other projects they're working on. So we essentially automated that data reporting for the city of Long Beach. And that's a solution that anyone who receives CDBG grant funds, cities across the country, they can use to essentially improve outcomes for their CDBG program by telling that story to government, to their own leadership, to the public and their community, essentially transparently telling those agencies, this is how we're affecting outcomes in affordable housing and community development. And because we're doing such a good job, give us more grant money next year. So that's how we're working on affordable housing right now.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think the automation side of things is such an important thing. I mean, agencies have to do more with less, especially in the era of COVID. So we also know that understanding and operationalizing data can be a really big challenge for agencies because they don't always have the right skill sets or internal expertise to do that and to unlock the data that they have. Tell me a little bit about how you're helping agencies navigate that problem.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think one thing that we've found over the last couple of years has really been that more really than sort of a lack of skills or expertise, it's so often about bandwidth. So a lot of the agencies that we work with, they have workflows in place for this. They have workflows for data. They have GIS professionals. They have data architects potentially. But the need for reporting and analytics so often outstrips the available bandwidth that those technical folks have to help out with those workflows. So really for us, it's about looking at that bandwidth and approaching everything from a need standpoint. So when we start working with a city or any kind of public agency, we do a lot of discovery first, really focused on what are the required reports that you have to get done, what are your current workflows around data analytics, what insights do you really want access to that you maybe don't currently because the data is too siloed, or the GIS person has a 3-month backlog of projects they're working on, and what would you do or what would your leadership do if you had access to those insights more readily on a more regular basis. So we really approach it from a need standpoint, and then we figure out how to get there. So I think one of the challenges and opportunities for us is that because we're a startup, because of the fact that I think the kind of really easy to use data integration workflows that we provide are pretty new to the market, a lot of the technical people that we talk to, at least initially, they have this assumption that in order to meet their data integration goals, they're going to have to spend a ton of money or a ton of time building out these sort of custom integrations with all their legacy systems, or they're going to have to just do it over the course of multiple years. And they get super excited when we show them what we do and how we streamline a lot of this and make it accessible. And they say, wow, we could do this a lot more quickly with Stae. And then, similarly, when we're talking to non-technical users, really what we're showing them is that they can make a lot of these insights self-serve. And allow them to not actually have to go to the GIS team or the analytics team quite as frequently. So that's really how I think we're operationalizing a lot of that data, is by giving technical users the opportunity to dramatically expand their bandwidth by working with something that's more off the shelf than they're expecting, and by speaking to non-technical users who can make these insights a lot more self-serve for themselves.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I think one of the other things that we often hear, the elephant in the room, is the legacy data problem that exists in government. And we know government agencies have data in all kinds of different systems, and some systems that are old and probably buried in a closet somewhere. But how do you help agencies tap into that data as well as the third-party data or other data that they may not be using on a regular basis?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, legacy data is only sort of one piece of that challenging puzzle. The whole other side of the spectrum is like brand new kinds of data from IoT devices and shared scooters and new kinds of sensors that cities are working with. But yeah, on the legacy side, I think one of the key challenges that we see over and over again is getting data out of legacy systems, formatting it and cleaning it properly. So, pretty much every public agency has spent a ton of money and time integrating, an enterprise level HR solution, for example, is sort of one use case. And the way we address that, the way we make that data sort of a lot easier and more flexible to work with, is we can automate that import process into Stae. We can add a ton of context by, bringing in other data sets that are sort of available out on the internet or from other sources. And we give our users the ability to clean and essentially snap that data that they're pulling in from legacy systems to make sure that the quality is there. So I think a good example of that is that one of the transit agencies that we work with really one of their key initiatives right now is better understanding operator absenteeism and overtime expenditures. As you mentioned, everyone's thinking about how to do more with less right now. Revenues are super tight in the COVID era, and transit agencies just can't afford this sort of level of overtime and absenteeism that they're seeing. But their HR data system is super legacy, and they're having trouble extracting the data from it to do those kinds of analytics. So we're working with them to essentially implement an automated data cleaning workflow so they can start to understand where their issues are and bring costs down for their agency.
Yeah, I think that's really important work. So I know you're applying this technology to many other verticals. You mentioned transportation. You've also been doing work in budgeting. Can you share a little bit more about the adaptability of your platform and some of these other use cases that exist at the state and local level?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and thanks for flagging that. Yeah, I mean, civic data challenges really, I think they're sort of vertical agnostic. The unifying factor is that public agencies, especially at the city level where there's limited bandwidth to bring on technical folks, there are major challenges for working with data in mobility and affordable housing and community development and budgeting. So I think the key thing that we're seeing right now is that taxpayers really expect accountability. I mean, there's There's a lot that's being asked of public agencies right now. I think it's really important to flag that. Folks in city government, in county government, in MPOs and regional government are being told, your revenue's going down the toilet. A lot of folks' jobs are potentially at stake. We really need you to be more sort of efficient and lean now than you maybe ever have been. That's a really hard place to be. And I think that accountability really depends on good reporting, and good reporting depends on reliable data and consistent data availability that not just one or two GIS folks can manage and can work with, but really that program managers at every level can take and tell stories about performance management, tell stories about the ROI that they're seeing with their programs. So I think we're seeing that pop up in a million different ways, but I think largely it's about outcomes. So we're working with one agency right now that is trying to look at their infrastructure development through more of an equity lens. So we're helping them look at their capital projects pipeline, expenditures, metrics of sort of demographic metrics that we're pulling in from the Census Bureau, and helping them prioritize how they're spending money a bit better, and giving them the opportunity to share that publicly with their constituents, with their city council. So I think a million different ways you can do that. You can talk about that with transit. You can talk about that with affordable housing. You can talk about that with budget transparency and community development. But yeah, I think the thread tying it all together is that if you democratize access to these kinds of insights, so that these folks who really want to be sort of data-driven, lean program managers in public agencies have the tools to do so, and really be better at their jobs and provide services to their constituents.
Yep, amazing stuff. So most important question now is, how do agencies get in touch with you that want to learn a little bit more about your platform?
Yeah, that's a great question. So our website is stae.co, stae.co. I'm reachable. You can email me at Joe, at stae.co. Also, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to get on the phone and answer any questions you might have.
Well, Joe, thanks so much for carving some time out to share all the great work that you're doing. So I want to shift gears and now bring Roshan Sethna, partner of Bloom Housing by Exygy, in to talk a little bit about the work that they are doing. So Roshan, thanks so much for joining us. So first of all, tell us a little bit about Exygy and how you're tackling housing through your Bloom Housing product today.
Yeah, so Exygy is a consulting agency. We partner with social impact organizations, and the crux of what we do is design and build technology that improves lives. So we're a team of designers, software engineers, product managers. We also work across a range of issues, from affordable housing to healthcare to criminal justice reform. So for the past 5 years, one of our flagship products has been a suite of digital tools that basically supports the management and delivery of affordable housing. So these tools are really for any jurisdiction out there that wants to better manage, deliver, report on their affordable housing. Cities and counties can manage their affordable housing stock really transparently. So when I say tools, what does that mean? One of our main websites is that we provide in the suite is helps people search for affordable housing and apply to it online. So it's a website for housing seekers that essentially helps them get through their housing search process. The other website or tool is an administrator-facing tool. So it allows housing developers or city staff to log in and manage their housing listings or lease up their buildings in kind of a fair and transparent way. So one of the main benefits of this to jurisdictions is that they can implement really impactful policies. For example, if they wanted to prioritize placing people in housing who had been displaced in the last few decades, they could implement that policy through this technology and transparently track if it's actually happening.
That's amazing. So one thing that really stood out with the work that you were doing is this notion of having a single entry point and a common digital application process across, affordable housing properties. And that kind of lends itself to really streamlining the experience for the end users, but also for the agencies. Tell me a little bit about why that's so important today.
Yeah, I think you hit on why it actually is important. The experience is kind of at the crux of it. So having a single place for people to go to search and apply, having a common application process, no matter the unit or the building, those are solutions. And I think solutions can evolve, and they probably will. But what was really important for us to focus on was the experience people were having. And the experience people were having, I mean, there's a lot of data that we collected around that, but One is that people were standing in line to submit really lengthy paper applications that were different for each unit, different for each building. So they had to understand, okay, what's the requirements here? What paperwork do I need? And then on the flip side, city and county staff were having to manage things on different spreadsheets. It was a really disparate process. So a single entry point and a common app really helped us kind of streamline that for both sides. And especially if you're housing insecure, if you're working multiple jobs, whatever it is, you don't have time. So we shortened that application process from hours and days to about 15 minutes online. And so that was, it was a technical process, but I would say it was also a political process. We got together all the different housing developers, the city, the county. We really understood what needs to go into a common app. So those decisions were made alongside the housing developers themselves, and alongside users as well.
Yeah, I think it's a really important takeaway for other companies, right? You can't just deploy technology into these areas and expect magic to happen, but you have to focus on the processes on top of it. So it sounds like that's a big part of what you do. So I know one of the other things that stood out was around this equity aspect. And, this has popped up, especially with COVID and everything that happened this year. I mean, equity has been really front and center, and inclusiveness. So tell me a little bit about the equity aspect in all of this. How are you maintaining and building trust in the process of, deploying this technology?
Yeah, this is a big theme of 2020, but it's something that I think I'm really proud of Exygy and our team and how we focus on this. I think there's been a lot of loss of trust in the delivery of social services, especially with government. I think people expect to be treated poorly or not to have a good experience. Like we all expect that going into the DMV or, whatever it is, we kind of have that, okay, let's see if I can get through this mentality. One of my colleagues and I, when we started this effort, we were user testing with a user, and we kind of put a sketch of the potential product in front of the person. And they said, "Oh, I think I'm on the wrong site. Can you navigate me to the right place? I don't think I'm." And we're like, "No, this is a site." And they're like, "Oh, really? Like this looks too nice to be affordable housing. I don't think I'm in the right place." And I think it's really sad that we don't treat these systems. Another one of our users said the low income population really deserves the same level of respect as people who can pay $6,000 a month in San Francisco. And I think that's very true. So this is one of my favorite things about our approach to our work. One of our lead designers, Wendy Fong, she continually says we design with, not for. So what does that mean? That means that everyone that touches the system is really integrally involved in its creation. So if that's affordable housing seekers, counselors, case managers, for-profit and nonprofit housing developers, city and county staff, that list is really large. How have they been involved? So we're a design firm. So the basic methods of interviews and user testing, of course, we use those. But we really have workshops where we make decisions together. So going back to that common digital application to apply to any unit in a particular jurisdiction, we made critical decisions about what goes into that with people. Like we weren't, designers off here making that decision after we got input, but we were really making those decisions together. Community advisors and steering committees that hold us accountable or give us advice. So this is stuff we've done for literally the last 5 years on a week-to-week basis throughout the process. And then the last thing I'll say about that is that we also have to kind of check our dynamic with the community. So how are we being invited in? Are we understanding how we're showing up as designers or product managers who might have a certain power dynamic with the community, or the community having a power dynamic with us? Us as individuals, how we show up in our identities. So we take a very personal approach to how we integrate with the community and build what we're building. And at the end of the day, the product has to have integrity. We made a decision early on, this is a good example, to not include social security number in the application. That's because social security numbers were really being used as identifiers. And we said okay, we can identify people with a combination of their birth date and their name. So let's not create unintentionally this database of people that have and don't have social security numbers. So you need to kind of build integrity to like every decision you're making in the product.
Yeah, and it's evident that that's a very purposeful thing that you're doing as you look at deploying these types of initiatives. So that's great. So I'm curious on the results side. So what kind of results are you seeing?
Yeah, so the product exists, the two tools that I'm talking about exists in 4 different jurisdictions in the San Francisco Bay Area. And we're actively talking to a lot of other jurisdictions in the US to implement it. The one that's been around the longest and the one we initially built this product for that led this effort is the City and County of San Francisco. So we have the most data from them. They are placing over 100 households a month in housing. They have gotten a lot of data about the need, of course, in the Bay Area, over 500,000 applications since we launched in 2016, in the millions of site visitors. One thing that's really cool is that we have a 97% adoption rate of the product. So that means that of people who are applying for housing, 97% of them apply online. So there's still a paper application process if people, don't have access to internet or a device. But because the product has been so co-created and designed with the community, I think that really got us to that 97% rate. And part of that was also language translation and making sure that, non-English speakers could navigate the site as well.
Has COVID changed any of that for you? Has it accelerated the need to focus on this or, slowed it down? Tell us a little bit about the COVID impact.
Yeah, man, COVID has made it so much harder to deliver social services, period. If you already take the layer of trust that was an issue, many people, I think, rely going on in person to case managers or into a government office because that's where they can monitor trust. So digital tools obviously are playing a bigger role in 2020, and governments are accelerating this digital transformation that a lot of people have been kind of pushing for a while. San Francisco itself, taking the SF example again, they have close to 1,000 services that need to transfer or move more digitally. But they also have, we have here in SF 1 in 8 people that lack high-speed internet access, 1 in 7 people that lack basic digital literacy. So we have to really think when we're designing these products about if someone's looking at it on a phone, using their own data, you don't want it to be a heavy product that's going to take up a lot of data. You don't want to have a lot of photos, images. You want to think about reading level of the text in the website, language translations, like I mentioned, and then a lot of community partnerships. So people in the community, we have a lot of nonprofits that are down the street from our office that we know really well, that people go in to get support. If they're not able, if they're a senior or citizen or whoever they are, and they want support from someone to get them through the application process, if they're have lower digital literacy. So you need to, in that way, also work very embeddedly in the community.
So one thing that stood out as I was kind of preparing for today's conversation was around this notion of how to tackle affordable housing. And a lot of people say we just need to build more, make it available, just, go to town and start building stuff. But why should agencies look at tackling this issue through technology instead of just doing the same thing that they've been doing for years and trying to, make it be a numbers game with what's available?
Yeah, that's one of my favorite questions. My team knows this, but I'm I studied policy. I'm come from this policy background. And so I by no means will ever tell anyone that technology is the solution, and the technology is as good as what it's being layered on top of. So like Joe was saying, capacity is an issue, right? So in the affordable housing space, of course, we can distribute affordable housing stock as much as there is affordable housing stock. And we can use technology to better deliver and manage that affordable housing stock, but we can't do anything if there's no affordable housing. And then in the 20th century, I think we need these systems to better deliver and manage affordable housing to make it transparent. So, the cheat answer is that agencies need to do both, the technology side and the stock side. I think what's really wonderful about technology is that it can inform and be a lever for broader change. So If states are mandating counties to build housing, for example, they can now see if that housing is getting built. Joe was talking about some of this with reporting. They can provide technical assistance to help unblock counties and like hurdles they're having, whether it's like where to build or what to build. The city and county of San Francisco and other jurisdictions of the Bay Area are very interested in like who's getting housing. Are we meeting the need of the community? It makes no sense to build, a ton of studio units if you have mostly families that need enough space for 5+ people or something like that. And then lastly, back to the policy point, I think you can see if affordable housing policies are working. So a policy example is inclusionary housing. Inclusionary housing is used in a bunch of jurisdictions across the United States. Basically says that if you are building new housing in our jurisdiction, you got to rent a percentage of it out at a below market rate. So you can actually see if that policy is working, who's getting the housing, is it being leased up fairly? Just because there's affordable housing stock doesn't mean it's getting to people and it's having the intended impact. And at times we even see vacancy rates in units, right? Yeah.
So last question for you is just, for agencies that are looking to connect with you, how do they get in touch with you? How can they work with you?
Yeah, we would love to connect with any jurisdiction who wants to work on and manage and grow their affordable housing, both on the technology and policy sides. You can reach us at housing.exygy.com. Exygy is EXYGY. And you can also reach out to me on LinkedIn as well. And my email is my first name @exygy.com.
Well, fantastic. Thanks so much for joining us. And so, Joe and Roshan, fantastic discussion. I know we only had 30 minutes to kind of dive in the world of what you were doing, but, inspired by the work that you've been able to accomplish and, really the purpose-driven side that you have with your companies. So just appreciate your time. We'll make sure to put links to both your companies in the show notes, as well as how to contact you. So agencies that are listening in that want to partner with you and want to get in touch, we'll make sure that they have the ability to connect with you. And we at GovTech look forward to following your success over the months to come. I know 2021 is a big year right around the corner, but these types of issues are going to be front and center from a policy standpoint. And so we know technology is going to play a really important role in how agencies augment and amplify their ability to do more with less. Next Friday, we'll be looking at the world of transportation with 2 CivStart accelerator startups in the transportation space. We'll see you at the same time in the same place, but next time with Joe. And make sure to check out the full set of episodes at ICYMI.video. Thanks for joining, Joe and Roshan. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, Dustin.
Thanks so much, Dustin.